Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, August 12th, 2021. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, author of Medicare For All, A Citizen's Guide, will be joining us. Meanwhile, the FDA will authorize a third vaccine dose for the estimated 7 million immunocompromised Americans, another stark example of international vaccine apartheid, and the CDC is also backing the safety of getting the shot while pregnant. California becomes the first state to issue a vaccine mandate for all K-12 educators in public and private schools, or face weekly testing, with the largest teachers' unions lining up behind these measures. In Texas, 2 judges have rebuffed Governor Greg Abbott's mask ban, ruling that localities can implement mandates as Texas hospitals are overrun with COVID patients. In gut-wrenching news, 1,600 children with COVID were hospitalized last week, a significant increase, with children's hospitals reporting they're beginning to run out of ICU beds, particularly one I read in Arkansas. This squares with news out of Indonesia that the Delta variant may be affecting kids more. Too early to tell, but more on that in a bit. In a blow to whistleblower rights, WikiLeaks' Julian Assange has lost his high court battle in the UK, which allows the US to broaden its case on Assange's extradition. And lastly, in Afghanistan, the Taliban has taken its 10th provincial capital in a week, as the US Embassy in Kabul reportedly reaches out to the Taliban for assurances that they won't get attacked. All this and more on today's program. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Thursday, and thus I am here. I am the captain of the ship, so to speak. And unfortunately, I come to you with some heartbreaking COVID news. That children's hospital story out of Politico and some of the numbers that we're seeing there just, put a pit in my stomach, and I can't even imagine, for the parents listening, people who have young children in their life, there is, I would imagine, immense concern, especially if you're in an area where vaccine rates are particularly low and you're seeing an increase in hospitalizations and a lack of willingness by the people around you to get vaccinated, to mask up, etc. One of these places that has a lower vaccine rate than the rest of the country and is having difficulty getting its constituents vaccinated is Tennessee. And we'll go to that in a second, some footage from a Tennessee school board meeting. But as I mentioned earlier in headlines, scientists and doctors aren't quite sure yet if the Delta variant is having a greater effect on kids. But there are pieces of evidence that show that it might. It would make sense given the fact that the Delta variant is multiplying more quickly in all people. The fact that it's spreading more contagiously and it's causing a number of breakthrough infections in vaccinated people, although you are much less likely to, one, get the infection, and 2, experience harsh symptoms if you are vaccinated. But we are seeing more child deaths in Indonesia. A few weeks back, there was an increase in child deaths that people there were potentially attributing to the Delta variant. And now we're seeing this increase in child hospitalization. So I'd imagine that the Save the Children crowd is they're definitely focused on this imminent threat to child safety, right?
As of August 7th, Florida is reporting 8.1 children hospitalized with COVID-19 per 100,000 residents. And I guess we don't know if that's, the new variant or what's going on there, but it's an alarming trend.
Yes, and just something to look out for. And so we hear all the time from the right wing, they care about the children, they love the children, that's why women don't have the right to their own bodies. It's very concerning. Save the children, save the children. We have to save the children from the blood-sucking Democratic politicians and elites in the deep state, for example. They're quite concerned about child safety. Here's some footage from a Tennessee school board meeting the other day where they must be focused on trying to get everybody vaccinated so children are less likely to catch COVID from their parents who are around them. That must be the focus of this meeting. No more masks, you hear them cry, and we should attribute this footage to Brinley Heineman. I think she works for the Tennessean, which she published a lot of this footage. She published this footage on Twitter. So they're chanting, no more masks, no more masks. This is a part of a larger trend that we're seeing in the country where parents are going to school board meetings and heckling medical professionals and members of the school board because there is a discussion that is being had that masks might be required in schools because this same exact crowd is refusing to get vaccinated at the rate that is necessary to protect kids. Now, it's not going to get rid of the Delta variant, but it's not rocket science. The more people that are vaccinated, the less likely that they are going to spread it to kids under 12 who are unable to get vaccinated, the same kids they are trying to protect. Here's a little bit more footage from the school board meeting, and I want you to pay close attention to the sign that this woman is holding.
Also, I'll see you all in court. Yes. My child will not be wearing
It says, I don't care what you vote, but my kids will be as masked as an Obama birthday. B-Day. I don't really get that.
Well, I mean, Obama had a birthday that was ill-advised, but he was outdoors, I think, is my understanding. It was outdoors and vaccinated, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I'm not going to defend that party. I think it's psychopathic that he parties with celebrities on his birthday.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually did not see, this is how I think convoluted it was, because I'm not sure how you mask a birthday. I thought that this had something to do with the birth certificate.
Oh, no.
No. So I guess this had to do with his Martha's Vineyard shebang, which, yeah, bad look, but right. I could care less.
But I think the point, like, where we're talking about, like, the idea that people just are just suggesting masks for control of children. No, they don't want the virus to pass as freely as it might without masks, even cloth masks. And, like, they don't want your kids to get sick, you idiots. And that we have an apparatus, basically a political propaganda apparatus, that has convinced so many parents that the way to save their children is to be vehemently against masks in the face of a mutating virus. It is what it is, really. It says I kind of, 3 years ago, if you would have told me that this is where we are in the pandemic, I would have been like, that's a little bit cynical, but yeah, that's where we're at. And
as I said, if they wanted to be, say, a little bit more consistent, they could go, we're all vaccinated. We're trying to get vaccinated. We believe that this layer of protection is enough so that my child's discomfort in school with wearing a mask, like, that's not necessary. We want them to have a normal childhood. I don't know if I'd agree with that, but at least think that would be a point that could be comprehensible. But that's not what this is. This is basically projection. And these parents who have this mistrust of science and this distrust of authority and this desire to stick it to people telling them what to do, and they have these fantasies about being in the old wild, wild west, projecting their own desires and their own urgency to get things back to normal onto their children and pretending it's about their safety. Like, it's actually quite gross because it's not about your kids. It's really about you. And I'm not going to call people bad parents because of this, but maybe I will because that has nothing to do with your kids. When you are sensibly looking out for them, you make it about them. And if you cared about their safety, you would be vaccinated. And I'd make a big bet that that same crowd is very much against the vaccine mandates as well. And the last point I'll make about this is that this is a part of a larger organizational grassroots tactic by conservatives right now. And you have certain GOP operatives. I read a quote in the AP today saying, oh, this has become way too polarized, this mask issue. While in the same breath, behind the scenes, the Republicans are actively fanning these flames because they understand that it's an electoral advantage to have this anger fomenting in people who are likely to vote for them on a local level. So much so that they're going to school board meetings, they're making signs, they're aggressively
the
participating.
Truth is that, like, tax cuts for the wealthy aren't a very good energizing issue, so the GOP needs to take it where it can get it. So there may be Republican operatives that would like masks to not be so polarized, but now that it's polarized and it's polarizable for basically, the purposes of future campaigns, they're going to polarize it more.
Because it's advantageous for them. And so no matter what quotes you see in the paper about, oh, we wish this wasn't the case, the reality is that they see it as an advantage because they understand that you can mobilize the troops on the ground with cultural issues like this. You can't, as Matt says, get them behind their actual agenda. Please, we rile up their animus and their anger about certain topics, and then we trick them into voting for us in this way. And this is just a part of the same playbook. We've seen it with immigrants. We've seen it with black people. We've seen it with gay people, LGBTQ people. Of course, this is the next culture war for them, and it's one that gets them very riled up, as I say, on a granular local level. If you are at a school board meeting and you're that angry about masks, you're also quite likely to vote in state elections, to vote for Republicans on the federal level, and more. And that is the direct design of this project. We have to take a quick break. We have some ads today, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well, we have to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will be joined by Abdul El-Sayed to talk about Medicare for All.
Thank you, Emma. Hey, today's sponsor is BetterHelp Online Counseling. They're giving our audience 10% off their first month when you go to betterhelp.com/Majority Report. BetterHelp gives you access to your own fully licensed and accredited therapist via phone, chat, or video. Now, sure you're aware if you've attempted to go see a therapist. Therapists elsewhere have long wait lists. Sometimes it can take you weeks. Sometimes it can take you months before they can see you. But when you sign up with BetterHelp, they match you with a therapist based on your specific needs, and you'll be communicating with them in less than 24 hours. A lot of people found telemedicine to be very helpful, particularly therapy during COVID. And I suspect there's a lot of folks who are just going to stick with that. I found it much more convenient. Obviously, a lot of stress coming out of a pandemic, a lot of stress during a pandemic, a lot of stress when there's not a pandemic. Therapy has been extremely helpful for me. It's always helpful to speak to someone. And once BetterHelp connects you with a therapist, if you find that it's not a good fit, you can switch to a new one at any time for any reason with no additional charge. They have thousands of licensed therapists from all over the country, so they have therapists with specialties that may not even be available in your area. BetterHelp also tends to be more affordable than therapists that you'd find through traditional means. You don't have to have insurance to use BetterHelp, and they have financial aid options for those who qualify. BetterHelp is giving everyone in our audience 10% off your first month when you go to betterhelp.com/Majority Report. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/Majority Report. You can find the URL in the description of this video or podcast and check it out.
We are back, and I would like to welcome to the program Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. He is the author, co-author of Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. Abdul, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Emma, it's a privilege to be with you.
Yeah, good to see you again. I'm excited to talk about this because, many people know you probably as a politician. You ran for governor of Michigan in 2018 on a very progressive platform. But before that, you were Detroit's health director. So talk a little bit about your background in healthcare policy and how that motivated you to write this book alongside your co-author, Dr. Micah Johnson.
Yeah, well, look, I grew up wanting to be a doctor, and a lot of that was because I grew up in this contrast. I was raised by my father, who was an immigrant from Egypt, and my stepmother, who was a daughter of the American Revolution. And a lot of summers I'd go off to Egypt where I'd hang out with my grandmother. Now, she raised 6 kids of 8 to whom she gave birth. 2 of them died before the age of 1. I didn't know this at the time, but in the 15 hours it would take me to get to Egypt, I traveled about 10 years difference in life expectancy. Here's a crazy thing, though. Growing up in Southeast Michigan, I could go 15 minutes and go 10 years difference in life expectancy to Detroit. And addressing those differences and who gets access to a long, healthy life and who doesn't, the way that that's patterned by race and socioeconomic position, those were the things that got me to become a doctor. And as I was training, I went to medical school in New York. I realized that not only was it that our healthcare system wasn't just not part of the solution, it was part of the problem. And I realized that rather than being the kind of doctor that worked in the system, I'd rather be the kind who worked on the system. I was in grad school when the ACA passed, and it was so frustrating to me that we fought so hard to get such incremental reform when we knew that the big kinds of change that we needed, the kind of change that would guarantee every single American access to high quality healthcare without having to potentially go into bankruptcy, that's what we should have been fighting for. And no matter what we try and fight for, look, the opponents of any change, the folks who make a ton of money off the system, they're going to fight us just as hard. And so we might as well be focused on the big change. And that to me is Medicare for All. And so when Senator Sanders ran on this, those of us who've been in healthcare know that has been the sine qua non of real healthcare reform from the beginning. And he built a real movement around this. And it's something that we wanted to take out of the political space and put into the kitchen table space, the places where people are talking about their lives and their challenges and about how much it costs them every 2 weeks or every month to pay for their healthcare and what they're worried about if, in fact, one of their family members was to get sick. And that's why Micah and I decided to write this book.
Yeah, well, it's really great because you divide your book up into 3 separate parts: the diagnosis and the history of the problem, the policy behind Medicare for All, and then the politics. So I want to talk a little bit about the history because that part was so fascinating to me. But first, I just want to emphasize your point about the ACA, because what people may not realize when they look from the outside at the American healthcare system is that part of the many problems with it is that it's divided up into multiple buckets, and the ACA just essentially added or supplemented, bolstered one of the 6 buckets. You got employer-based insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. Well, actually, maybe I'll let you list all of them, because that is so incremental when you look at it. Just supplementing one of the 6 divisions of an already expensive, bloated, inefficient system that's designed really for profit as opposed to efficacy.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think the ACA was really important. I think it's great that more people have healthcare because of it. I think it's great that health insurance can't knock people off of their coverage because they have pre-existing conditions. That kind of discrimination is wrong. And so the ACA did some really great things. The question, though, is that it did not deal with the brokenness at the heart of our healthcare system. And as you were talking about, people in our country, we stratify access to health insurance. There are people who get really high quality health insurance from their employers. There are people who get bottom of the barrel health insurance from their employers. There are people who get health insurance from Medicaid, which is a public health insurance program operated by the states for low-income people. And then there are a large proportion of people who get their healthcare through Medicare, which is a government healthcare program for seniors and people with certain disabilities. Then there are people who get their health insurance on the exchanges, which they buy into through a program that the ACA set up. And then there are people who just don't have health insurance at all, and they are left to fend for themselves. And what we've seen in the system, unfortunately, is that health insurance, private health insurance, has figured out how to do a couple of things that allows them to continue to exploit those of us who have it and extract from us while excluding folks who cannot afford it. And that is a larger and larger number. One of those things is that they've just raised premiums on everybody. And so the cost that you pay every 2 weeks to every month to have this thing called insurance goes up. But then they've also created these things like copays and deductibles, which are money that you pay to get the healthcare that you thought you already paid for. And in doing that, they sort of have 2 different price tags, one that you see and one that you're taking a bet that you won't see, which is that deductible or that copay, assuming that you're not going to get sick. And all of this, right, is so that they can make 15% off the top of the system, money that you paid that you thought was going to be paying for your healthcare should you need it, only to find out that, in fact, the sure part of the insurance was not there for you. And so, unfortunately, in building around this system and trying to stabilize it, all we've done is created space for those health insurance corporations to continue to profiteer off of the system, profiteer off of our bodies. And I don't think that's the best way forward. And what Medicare for All would do is say, enough with the private health insurance. What we really need is public health insurance for everyone. And if we did that, right, then those middlemen in the insurance industry go away. And we're all paying into a system that we know will be there for us without these out-of-pocket costs that hit us only when we get sick, adding insult to injury.
Right. I mean, when you talk about a middleman, it's almost sanitizing what they do, because it's essentially like a mob boss taking a cut in one of those like old movies or something like that. That's really how I see it. And of course, it doesn't have to be this way. Your book talks about that at length, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that healthcare policy in this country, within that, this has been a long fight, really, since the start of the 20th century, and there have been obstacles in the way every step of the way. So just, I guess, take us to the start of the 1900s when national health insurance first came onto the scene in terms of being a part of the national discussion, and then maybe just take us all the way through the Clinton failures when it came to addressing healthcare policy, because that's over 100 years of an inability to get a specific program and a way of addressing healthcare, and it's been diagnosed, no pun intended, as the solution for over 100 years.
That's right, and it's a long history, and what I would like to do is sort of walk folks through the highlights, the most important parts. And it was in the progressive era in the early 1900s where politicians, namely Teddy Roosevelt, recognized that we had a real imbalance between the economics of hospitals and doctors and the need for healthcare for Americans of all stripes. And what was happening is that you'd have these hospitals that were either funded by local municipalities or church groups. And they were now, because of the nature of medicine was changing, they were finding their costs to employ scientifically trained physicians, because of course, before that point, there really wasn't science to train physicians. Germ theory was a pretty new thing. In order to employ physicians that actually used science, i.e. were effective, the costs went up. And they found that they were charging the patients who'd come in more and more. So there needed to be a system to even out the payments into those hospitals. And so that started actually when the Baylor University Hospital partnered with a local teachers union in Texas and said, look, we're going to charge you $7 a month, right? And you're going to get unlimited healthcare from our hospital should you need it. And they built, in effect, the first health insurance company, and that went on to become Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now, there were a couple of accidents of history that cemented that into the norm. One of them was during World War II, there was a freeze on wages that you could give to employers. And so what employers started to do was offer these sort of health insurance packages as a sweetener. And then the IRS decided to make those tax-free, which basically cemented the health insurance system that we have today. But there have been so many efforts to finally guarantee every single person access to healthcare, and not just those who are fortunate enough to be employed. It looks like the effort by Harry Truman in the 1940s to pass national health insurance, which is opposed tooth and nail by the American Medical Association, which was the guild representing doctors at the time. You have the fights during the Nixon era to provide everybody access to a national health insurance program led by Ted Kennedy. You have, of course, the fight for Medicare itself under LBJ, which was actually won, which is what created the system as it stands. And get this, if you go back to the fight for Medicare, you start to see a lot of the contours of our current moment. The big pushback from the AMA and other groups about Medicare was fear-mongering over the fact that Medicare would forcibly desegregate hospitals in the South. And so they used racism as a fear tactic against universal health care. In fact, if you look at a lot of Heather McGhee's really excellent writing on this, you look at the choice to expand Medicaid, for example, or even provide Medicare for all, you see racism rearing up again, a conversation about who deserves and who doesn't deserve health care, who should be able to get access to the service and who shouldn't. And the same sorts of dynamics rear their ugly head. And then, of course, you get to the Clinton era, where there was an effort to do somewhat similar to what ended up happening with the ACA. And the health insurance industry fought it tooth and nail. They put up an ad that is now sort of a classic ad in the annals of political history, which was this Harry and Louise ad, which ended, when they choose, we lose. Talking about government bureaucrats deciding what your coverage could offer. But they destroyed the political momentum behind it, just like they tried to do with the ACA, which leads us to the present moment, right? When Senator Sanders ran on Medicare for All, there was a junta of organizations that they came together under the flagship name, the quote unquote Partnership for America's Healthcare Future. And their goal was ultimately to end Medicare for All. They invested millions of dollars in attack ads. What's fascinating, though, that's important to remember here, is that the minute that Joe Biden sewed up the nomination in 2020, they started to just switch their ads to being from against Medicare for All to being against the public option. So there's an operating hypothesis that I think a lot of people have, which is that, they're going to oppose Medicare for All more than they're going to oppose any other change. But what we've seen in history is actually they're going to oppose anything. And so we might as well go for the whole enchilada, as you could say, to really create the kind of reform that would finally guarantee everyone access to a national health insurance program, rather than fighting incrementally the same kind of fight that we would have fought for the whole thing.
So I do want to move to the present day policy part, but there's so much there that I wanted to flesh out a little bit. Firstly, you talked about the fight under Truman for universal health care, basically, and how the biggest opposition group were doctors. As a doctor yourself, somebody with a degree, how do you, that fight continues, I believe, because it would be less profitable for doctors in many ways. Like, how do you square that with the Hippocratic Oath, for example? I mean, the financial incentives in this country, I feel like we kind of see doctors like priests, but they're an interest group like any other, and there are these incentives that still remain. So just, I guess, talk about that historically and then bring it to today.
Yeah, well, historically, doctors were small business owners. That's what they did. They got out of med school, they finished their residency, they put up their shingle, and they built a business. Today, that's actually becoming increasingly impossible simply because the power of the corporations in healthcare, whether they're the health insurance companies or the hospitals and healthcare systems, have basically crowded doctors out. Any hospital can outcompete a small physician-owned practice basically because they can force better reimbursement rates than that physician practice will. So what's happening now is fewer and fewer doctors own businesses. In fact, in 2018, the median doctor no longer worked for a physician-owned practice. They worked for a large hospital system. And what happened in 2018 is that the median doctor now supports single payer, Medicare for All. And so things are changing substantially. And what that means for us is that now physicians are starting to see the light. Unfortunately, though, you still have legacy physician organizations like the AMA that have been on the wrong side of fights for universal health care since their inception and frankly continue to be on the wrong side. But they're losing power relative to other organizations that have supported Medicare for All. And so I think the doctors are getting on the right side of this. Unfortunately, it took a reshaping of their financial incentives to get them on the right side. But I'm glad my physician colleagues are on the right side of this now. The question, though, ultimately at this point is, how do we take on the role of big money in shaping so much of our policy and our politics around healthcare? It used to be the AMA and that physician lobby. Now it's more America's health insurance plans and the hospital lobby that have taken up the fight against Medicare for All. And of course, you can't never forget pharma, who has fought tooth and nail and lobbied the government to the highest amount over the past 20 years, $4.3 billion, right. Lobbied government officials to keep the status quo.
Yeah, and the pharmaceutical lobby in and of itself, like, that also just struck me when you went through the history a bit, because they're essentially an accidental industry. Like, they don't need to have the power that they do. And yet now that the money is entrenched, it's seen as, well, we can never, ever move beyond this. But as you mentioned, there's of course international models, but they are so unnecessary, and yet they're constantly needing to remind us of their necessity. It's just a bizarre dynamic that I was hoping to get your thoughts on.
Well, when you think about pharma, right, they have figured out how to go from being science companies to being, in effect, large banks. And let me explain what I mean by that. In the past, pharmaceutical corporations actually used to do basic science research. They used to do the research that ultimately ended up in the medicines that so many of us rely on. And yes, we do need medicines, and people need to have them at costs that they can afford. But what has happened now is they've, in effect, outsourced all of their research and development to, I hate to say it, the government, right? The National Institutes of Health fund a lot of the basic, most risky science that ultimately gets turned into medications. But for every 1,000 prescription drugs that could arise, or 1,000 experiments that could turn into a prescription drug, really only one of them makes it out. What happens is that federally funded research, usually done at universities, gets rolled out into these biomed firms that really have one or two compounds that they're trying to work up and figure out if they can work to treat a particular disease. And then the large corporations now, right, the blue chip pharmaceutical corporations, the Gileads and the Pfizers of the world, they'll buy them up, and they'll use the money that they make on, you name a blockbuster drug, to fund a new set of biotechs, and they'll take a bet. 1 out of 6 of them might work. And there you go. That's going to be the next big blockbuster drug. But they do that in a way where they're constantly holding the American public hostage to these absurdly high prices that the government can't even negotiate through Medicare. That leaves us in positions where, yes, there are really great medications that people can use to treat their disease. However, too many people can't afford them. And even when they can, it means dire financial circumstances for them later on. And so that's the pharma side. On the health insurance side, you're absolutely right. There is no structural reason why you have to have private health insurance, right? The government can do health insurance better for less, more effectively, more affordably, more equitably than health insurance companies can do. But we allow this system to persist simply because these companies spend a lot of money lobbying our politicians, investing in electoral campaigns, and advertising to the public to plead their own necessity. And the fact of the matter is that they're misguiding the public and creating a space for themselves in a way that holds our entire healthcare system hostage to the 15% they take off the top of every transaction.
And you talked about the high prices of pharmaceuticals, the inability based on enshrined by law for Medicare or Medicaid to negotiate with these pharmaceutical companies. But the other thing that really struck me that you wrote about as well is the monopoly power of the insurance companies in keeping these prices high. They can wield their monopolistic power to negotiate better rates with some of these hospitals, but they keep the money for themselves. I guess just talk a little bit about that, because we hear so much about the efficiency of the marketplace on the right or even in the center talking about the healthcare system, but whatever power they do have, and they have a lot, they use to enrich themselves pretty brazenly, and yet costs remain, as you say, quite high.
Yeah, when I talked about the relative power of physicians in the system, I mentioned this, but there's a huge consolidation that's happening in the healthcare system. Health insurance companies are buying up other health insurance companies. Hospitals are buying up other hospitals. And collectively, what they're doing is squeezing out any competition. So what you end up having is localized monopolies, right? Obviously, they're not the only insurer in the country, but they may be the only insurer, in Southeast Michigan or in Sacramento. And even if it's not
Blue Cross Blue Shield, you being from Michigan, running for governor there, their power in that state is just completely astronomical.
I mean, they're 70% of the market share, and they invest in both political parties and politicians on either side. And so, yes, they have figured out a way to leverage their size and their power into politics. And, a lot of this gets back to not just the healthcare system, but the broken firewall between our politics and corporations. And so, what they'll do is, in effect, they will leverage their monopolistic power through this consolidation to negotiate better rates. And all of that is so that they can continue to profit, not so that they can pass on savings to patients, not so that they can provide better coverage or more affordable coverage, but so that they can pocket more of that money in profits. And a lot of that goes back to the folks running the C-suite. So, you mentioned Michigan, Dan Lepp, who's the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield, made $20 million last year, right? $20 million. Every one of those dollars was a dollar that was spent by someone to secure themselves healthcare coverage that didn't go into healthcare coverage, but instead went into his back pocket.
Right. Well, then let's just turn to Medicare for All, because we've diagnosed the problem you have very effectively, and all of the different kind of wrinkles to how corrupt this system is. Talk about the design of this incredibly salient healthcare proposal that I don't even know if Bernie Sanders fully understood how much it would take on and how it would be the ballast for universal healthcare policy and the conversation around it. It's like, I remember the 2020 primary. The moderators just went to every single candidate. Do you support Medicare for All? Do you like that? He centered and reframed healthcare policy in this country, and of course with the work of great progressives behind him as well. So for people who may not be familiar with the legislation, what is Medicare for All?
Yeah, Medicare for All is also known as single payer healthcare. And I want to explain what payer means. Payer is the one who pays for healthcare when it's done. If you think about it, right, you pay a health insurance company as it stands. And then if you were to go to a hospital or a doctor, they pay. That's why they're called a payer. So right now you have multiple payers, a whole bunch of health insurance companies that compete for each other for primacy in a particular market. You pay one of them or your employer pays one of them. And then ostensibly they pay for your healthcare, but usually they fight you for it and figure out how to make sure that they keep that money that you paid for your healthcare. So instead of multiple payers, you would have one payer, and that would be the federal government. So the federal government becomes your insurer, no matter who you are. You're young, you're old, you're employed, you're not employed, you're married, you're not married, you're over 26, you're under 26, doesn't make a difference. The government is there for you. It's your employer. And because the government doesn't have an incentive to make money off of you, they don't have an incentive to charge you on the back end, this deductible or this copay. They're not interested in negotiating a set of rates that figure out how to consolidate the market because they are the only payer in town. There's a term that everybody understands, which is monopoly, right? A monopoly is when you're the only seller of a good, right? And when you're the only seller of a good, people have to pay the price that you're asking because you're the only one. What Medicare for All does would turn the government into the contrapositive of a monopoly, which is called a monopsony. A monopsony is the only buyer of a good, right? They're the only one paying, right? Single payer. And as the only one paying, they get to dictate the price. And so they can bring down the prices for the cost of healthcare for everybody. Everybody's included because everybody's covered. There are none of these copays or deductibles that at this point are attributable for about 67% of all bankruptcies in this country. We are providing a set of services that is consistent for you regardless of your life circumstances. It is a comprehensive solution to so many of our healthcare problems, whether it's the cost of healthcare overall, the unexpected out-of-pocket costs, the consolidation that is raising the prices, the fact that too many folks are uninsured, all of those problems. They get their solution in Medicare for All. And I'm gonna give you one more solution that I think is so important, particularly as we contend with COVID for like the 18th month, which is the fact that in this country, we don't invest in prevention. There's no incentive to do it, right? Because if you're a health insurer, even if you were to invest $1 today to prevent the disease tomorrow, the high probability is somebody's going to be on another insurer. So you're not saving yourself money, you're saving them money and ultimately Medicare money, which if you're a corporation, you're not interested in doing. Whereas in Medicare for All, right, you have the government is invested in both caring for you if you get sick, but also preventing your illness in the first place. And so there's a lot more opportunity for investment in public health, which we were so lacking right now. And I think those kinds of investments are going to be critical to building a healthier and certainly a more equitable America.
And as you say, in terms of incentives, the government is more incentivized to keep the prices low because it is a political calculation for them, as opposed to what we see with these health insurance companies attempting to extract every dollar from you. And I think prevention is a really important point because there is, as you say, in for-profit insurance, a very perverse incentive to, I'm not going to say keep people sick, but not necessarily stand in the way in terms of incidents happening. I guess, maybe expand upon that if you could.
Yeah, most of what makes people healthy isn't stuff that we do in the clinic or the hospital. It's stuff we do outside the clinic or the hospital. And no one health insurance company has the capacity to make sure that, for example, your streets are safe, or that your air is clean and pure, or that the water that you drink isn't going to poison you vis-a-vis lead in Flint. Those kinds of investments are investments that have nothing to do with health care, that have everything to do with public health. Those are also the kind of investments that the government has to make, and government should have an incentive to do. And when the government on the back end is responsible for caring for you if you get sick, then it also has an incentive to prevent you from getting sick in the first place. And right now what's happened is because healthcare is so freaking expensive, we're talking about 20% nearly of every dollar spent in our entire economy spent on healthcare, there is not that much money invested in keeping people healthy in the first place. And if you were to align those incentives via a program like Medicare for All, it changes very much the things that we do outside the clinic to keep you from getting in the clinic in the first place. And frankly, it maps to our interests, right? I mean, Emma, if I were to tell you, look, I have 5 MRIs I can sell you, right, for $500, would you buy them? You probably would say no, right? Because I don't need an MRI. But, right, let's say you were playing basketball tomorrow, right, and you felt a pop in your knee, and I'm like, okay, Emma, I've got 1 MRI for $5,000. Would you buy it? You probably would, because that's the key to figuring out if what you need to do to get healthy again. And the point that I'm making here is all of us would rather invest in staying healthy than invest in getting healthcare after we get sick. We don't want to get sick in the first place, but our healthcare system is designed to sell us healthcare after we get sick. There's no incentive really to keep us from getting sick. And so that doesn't really align with what we actually want. Yes, all of us want healthcare if we get sick, but we'd rather not get sick in the first place. And Medicare for All allows us to make those investments to keep us from getting sick in the first place.
Yeah, I like the assumption that I would be the one getting my knee blown out because I guess your crossover is just that good. But, you know, we'll return to that at another point. So I just want to talk a little bit more about the political realities of this. I mean, we've talked about the immense amount of money on the other side, but we're a lot farther away than I think a lot of people might understand. We have a president who has explicitly said he would veto Medicare for All if it came to his desk. He said that during the primary or at least the election at some point. At least half, if not more, of the Democratic Party is opposed to a single payer system. And now the position is so popular that they like to use the language of Medicare for All. Infamously, Pete Buttigieg during the primary, as I say, not to relitigate that, but it's just a good example. He came out for Medicare for All who want it. Talk about how that's just not viable, because there's only one path forward, and that is for, as you say, the monopsony model, the single payer model. And the attempts at incrementalism around this seem like, honestly, they would sap the larger goal when trying to go for Medicare for All.
Well, what a lot of politicians are trying to do at this point is to work around the millions of dollars that have been spent to inculcate people with a set of talking points that are intended to scare them off of the actual solution. And so what you'll hear when you raise Medicare for All is like, well, people love their choice. Well, actually, I don't think anybody really likes the choice of what health insurer they get. Which bureaucracy do I want to have to work through? And which plan do I want to have to choose that has some amount of premium and some amount of deductible? People don't care about that. People want to know who their doctor is going to be and that they're going to have a choice there. They also tell us that Medicare for All is going to cost too much, except for the fact it's going to cost us substantially less as individuals in the world. These are all talking points that a lot of money has been invested behind. And rather than take them on, like Senator Sanders and even Senator Warren did, they would rather skirt around them. And I just think that we have to spend a lot more time taking them on. It's one of the reasons that we wrote the book, because they're just not true. Those talking points are flawed and they're designed to fearmonger. And I think when you actually sit down with folks and say, all right, let's talk dollars and cents about how much you spend on healthcare now and how much you'd spend under Medicare for All and the product that you get, it's obvious that Medicare for All is a better deal. And so, yes, we are under right now an administration that does not support Medicare for All, and we're not going to get Medicare for All under President Biden. That being said, I do believe that what we do under President Biden is going to decide if and when we do get Medicare for All in the future, because this is the time for organizing. This is the time for folks who believe in this to get together, to continue to do the hard work of talking to people in their neighborhoods and at work and in their families about the challenges that our healthcare system has and the solutions that are available if we're willing to have the courage and the foresight to take them on. And I think we also have to name names about the powers that these corporations have had to lobby our politicians, to influence our public debate in ways that accrue only to their benefit and only to our loss. And so I believe deeply that this is a possible thing, and it is a probable thing. I think we're going to see it in my lifetime. But I also know that politics isn't linear, right? And so if you're looking at a straight line moving into a certain direction, that's just not how political change happens. And, we talk about Medicare in our book, in the fight for Medicare, and how many times the fight for Medicare failed until it finally succeeded. And so what we've got to be doing is building the groundwork for Medicare for All, even if that's not going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's so key, and also why the earlier conversation about the history of how long the struggle in this country, how it began in the early 20th century. We were talking about this shot down, shot down, shot down, shot down multiple times along the way in decades-long increments, to just kind of talk about the activism surrounding big agenda items like this that would be so immensely powerful and structural overhaul. It just goes to show that you have to have a long-term perspective as well as short-term goals, and short-term goals include organizing in the way that you talk about. So I think one of the bigger obstacles is we need more union support to push behind, and of course national nurses, they're incredible, but there needs to be a bit more, I think, pressure that is targeted and simple and on the ground that includes other unions. So I guess maybe talk a little bit about what that pressure looks like, what that organizing looks like, and how we can have that long-term perspective while also fighting like hell in the short term.
Yeah, well, a lot of the pushback I hear from union leaders, and I'm a proud union member of the AFT and SEIU. A lot of the pushback I hear is that we spend so much time and effort bargaining these contracts that we don't want to walk away from them, and I understand that, and I hear that. And I guess the long-term view that I always take is, imagine you didn't have to bargain for healthcare in the first place. Think about how much time and effort you did spend on healthcare. What would it look like to bargain for more than just healthcare? To bargain the major concessions that you got for things like time off or things like wages. And I think over time, that conversation is starting to really take root. The other point here is, unfortunately, for all of us, but it does accrue to the benefit of Medicare for All and the movement for Medicare for All, is that these healthcare corporations have gotten more and more greedy. And the amount of money that they're making and the amount of money that they're extracting from us is going up and up. And I think people are starting to look at their own circumstances, and they are just sick and tired of having to pay for something that's just not there for them when they need it. And that includes union members and non-union members. And I think as this continues to happen, people are going to start to see, unfortunately, the futility of continuing to rely on a private health insurance system, thinking that it's actually going to be there for them if and when they get sick. And I hope that that we will continue to be there talking about the opportunity that we have through Medicare for All and the challenges that we have through our current system, and demonstrating why our approach could be better. The last point I'll make is this. I wrote a previous book called Healing Politics. And in the book, my central thesis is that we as a country are struggling through an epidemic of insecurity. And the problem with insecurity is that it encourages an attitude of zero sum that says that the world cannot actually be better, that it really can only get worse. And because we are so, I would say, victimized by the past 40 years of Reaganism and a system that has sold off public goods for private benefit, that anybody who tells you that the system can be better, you instinctively mistrust. And so I think we have a responsibility to call out the system and explain why Medicare for All actually can take on the brokenness in the system and solve a lot of the problems that we're all experiencing in our day-to-day lives with our healthcare.
Right. Lastly, really quickly, before I let you go, what organizations would you direct our viewers to in terms of joining and fighting for Medicare for All?
Yeah, there are some really great ones out there. Obviously, you mentioned the National Nurses United. They have been a bulwark for Medicare for All. If you're, for my physician colleagues, the Physicians for National Health Insurance Program, PNHP, are fantastic. I'd encourage people to get involved with Be a Hero or Public Citizen or Social Security Works, who are doing amazing work. There are a number of organizations at the local level. In Michigan, we have Michigan for Single Payer that's been doing some great work on this front. And so I would say get involved with one of these organizations. They are constantly having amazing opportunities. CPD, another one. People's Action is another one. But even if you don't feel like you can give time dedicated to a particular organization, I always say that it's better to have 1,000 people talking to one person each than one person talking to 1,000 people. And the relationship that you built with the people that you know and love, use that as an opportunity to organize, right? That micro organizing really matters. So make it a point to say, look, whenever this healthcare conversation comes up, I'm just going to talk about why I think we could be doing better, and Medicare for All really is the answer. And if enough people are doing that, it's going to have a big difference. So yes, please get involved with one of these amazing organizations doing amazing work. But even if you can't, even if you don't have the time, just make it a point to be a micro organizer in your own life.
Absolutely. Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide is the book. Thank you so much for your time today.
Emma, thank you so much for a great conversation.
All right, folks, we'll be right back after the break. So Dan Crenshaw was at a fundraiser for a Senate candidate in Illinois, and his name is Bobby Piton, Piton. Sure. I don't think anybody really is going to be supporting him who's watching this, but Piton. Yeah, right, exactly. Pew! And he was essentially heckled because he expressed just an abject reality. Let's take a listen.
I can't tell if these jokes are serious. Problems, but don't kid yourself into believing that's why we lost. It's not. It's not.
You're wrong.
I'll tell you openly.
You're wrong.
And I'm not wrong.
Yes, you are. I have plenty of proof. I have proof in Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia.
You did the Maricopa.
Yeah.
How did that turn out?
And guess what? It's going to turn out, and it's going to flip.
Okay.
You watch. You're going to see firsthand.
It won't. And you've got to flip all 5 states to make it.
You know how they're stealing the elections?
All right. I'm not going to argue with this. I'm not going to argue with this. It's just something. Look, I'll say it openly. This is something you got to accept. Is there a lot of voter fraud?
He is right.
Probably is. Enough that Trump won? No, absolutely not.
You'll see.
Absolutely not. 5 different states, hundreds of thousands of votes. You're kidding yourself.
Yeah, so that's Crenshaw losing his cool at clearly some MAGA guy who is convinced that the Maricopa County investigation is going to overturn the election. Crenshaw attempts to point out that, yeah, you need multiple other states, but you'll see. You'll see. And when we were pitching this earlier before the show, Matt made the great point that this is going to be the wedge issue going forward within the Republican Party. I understand that they're dabbling in a variety of different cultural issues and COVID denial issues, vaccines and masks. Yes, all of that is going to be a part of the dividing line, even though, of course, the Republicans are more, I think, in the midst of COVID, aligned in their science and COVID denial than they are in this continued upholding of a fiction that Donald Trump somehow won the election. Because we interviewed Carol Lenning yesterday, who said she spoke to Kellyanne Conway, who Trump, when he lost, seemed to understand that he lost. But as he kept getting these conspiracy theories fed to him, he convinced himself, she believes, that he actually legitimately won the election. And then there's Republican senators and representatives who, as time goes on, are not as incentivized to uphold this nonsense because Trump's not in the public eye, and this is just all manufactured from his delusions of grandeur. They have no, there's no way for them to do this effectively.
Also, I just want to point out, Dan Crenshaw is every bit complicit in stoking this monster that doesn't believe the election was fair. He was criticizing mail-in ballots in September of 2020. He absolutely, he made his bed on this one, and he's complicit. And, I mean, it is hilarious to see him try to fight it. But this is Alex Perrine's take, which is that basically the insane the rubes took over the party. The people that were that they thought we could just rile people up with this nonsense, but now the true believers are the ones doing the fundraising.
Yeah, this is at a fundraiser, right? These people ostensibly have the means to donate to a wealthy Republican candidate, and they are beginning to believe this. So you made your bed, Crenshaw. Now lie in it. We have to say goodbye to the Peacock audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you tomorrow. Do you have something else to say about this Crenshaw clip?
No, not really. I mean, it is just fun though. Like it's interesting to see him have to say that stuff that no Republican can say, which is that Donald Trump lost the election and there wasn't actually any significant irregularity at all that that led into it. And I mean, the guy literally thinks that the Arizona stuff is still going to come through for him.
I know. You'll see. Do we have Brandon and Binder?
I'm going to admit them right now. While they're joining, had a full night on Left Reckoning.
Oh, yeah.
Last night. Derek Davison and Daniel Bessner of American Prestige Podcast. We talked about Afghanistan stuff, and also Bannon and Mike Lindell on teaming up with Bolsonaro against the machines that steal these elections.
Right. Rage against the machine.
Like all these Republicans think. I mean, this we talk about, like, this is a global problem, turn against sort of democracy and democratic legitimacy.
Yeah.
And in the post game, I bash Rockstar Games for enclosing the commons of modding culture, and also we talk about this Yang crypto thing that we're also going to talk about with Binder in the fun half.
For sure.
That's all last night. Patreon.com/leftreckoning to get the post game, but go subscribe to the YouTube channel, folks. We're closing in on 15K, which I am excited about.
Ooh.
You guys saved the crypto segment for me.
That we did.
I love it.
We did not talk about Andrew Yang's crypto tweet for the Peacock audience. That was not our editorial choice. We saved it for you.
I'm sure the Peacock audience would have really been into it. That Crenshaw clip is amazing too, by the way. I watched it, and it is, I mean, they certainly started something they don't know how to stop. Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, it's Frankenstein's monster all over again. They do it every time, the Republican Party.
Matt and Brandon, welcome. Brandon, what's up? What is happening over on the discourse?
Well, we're going to be recording tonight to talk about the ongoing drama with Andrew Cuomo and his resignation. And we'll also be talking a little bit more about the rise in Delta variant cases in COVID and some of the IPCC news revolving around climate change. So, really just a trifecta of positive, happy topics.
Yeah, wow, you're running down the news there. Those are, I would say, the biggest three stories. We should have done more on the IPCC report, but anyway, just thinking out loud. Binder, what's happening over on Doomed?
Tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time, I'll be going live at youtube.com/Matt Binder. We'll be talking about a number of different stories and issues, including my debate that I did on Tuesday night with the Convo Couch folks, Pasta and Fiorella. I had a debate with the two of them. First, it was with Pasta, the guy on the show. We had a debate about whether the left should unite with the Boogaloo Boys and other right-wing groups like that. And then I had a debate with Fiorella of that same program right after about force the vote and Medicare for All, and how Nina Turner should have told all the people in her district to drive 2 hours outside of her district the week before her election in order to get them to some Medicare for All march instead of, getting out the vote for her, which of course we all saw she really didn't need. I mean, obviously she won that election quite handily, no problems at all. We have another person in the House who can fight for Medicare for All. Oh wait, that didn't happen. But the debate was good, and a lot of people said I did pretty damn good. So I'll take it.
Just say, because we have IMs open here, props to Binder, says Nug Wrangler. Props to Binder for doing well in the combo couch debate. It was funny to hear the door adjacent tropes like AOC can pass Medicare for All because she has millions of followers on Twitter. KEKW.
My personal favorite moment was when I was talking with Fiorella, and she was like, you know, the squad could make Medicare for All happen right now if they fought for it. And I go, well, how would you, let's say they somehow get it past the House. What do you do about the Senate? And she goes, they can fight for it in the Senate. And I'm like, there is no member of the squad in the Senate. This is like, there is no pressure they can put. The Senate, 50-50 Senate right there, with not all 50 of them being progressive Democrats by far, such as Manchin and Sinema. So how do you expect to do that? And she just
know it.
Yeah.
She wanted the revolution. She said, we'll just have to fight for the revolution. That's, you know,
literally
that'll happen quickly.
We just had Abdul El-Sayed on to talk about how long and contextualize how long this fight has been for Medicare for All. But apparently people just think it started, or healthcare, universal healthcare just started in 2016. So it can just happen at the drop of a hat. But
yeah, I just want to make one point quick about the Boogaloo Boys thing, which is teaming up with the Boogaloo Boys is a great way to get entrapped by the federal government. Trapped in some sort of action and get arrested by feds because it's lousy with informants. I would suggest following that advice.
Yeah, good idea. And I think your dad wrote in to say, just Googled Emma Vigeland to confirm your Twitter handle, and the third suggestion that popped up was Emma Vigeland Cuomo tweet. Just saying.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
I really dug myself a hole by trolling them back, but I'm disengaging from now on. All right, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it. All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Can we bring back DJ?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Oh. Snowflake says what?
What?
Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Some of these needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We're back. All right, folks. So we were just talking about this, and I'll leave it be after this, but Come Shower with Crowder writes in, Jimmy Dore talked about you, Emma, at a live show. He re-said, the punch you in the face comment and talked about your $24 million studio. Is this Brooklyn single space $24 million? I'm joking.
I have no idea what that. Yeah, I don't know what that means.
I think it's the TYT studio. Okay, this segment made it into the podcast version. I will not be listening to that, but it's interesting that he's doubling down on the punch me in the face thing.
Wait, you sure that he's not talking about the $24 million Majority Report studio that you're sitting in right now?
I'm trying to say, right? Like, can't you guys tell?
It's like a $24 million cleaning bill in here.
But you know what's nice about Bradley is Bradley genuinely enjoys taking out the trash. Bradley, why don't you speak to that? Because it's been so necessary. You've been such a welcome addition.
I really do love sanitation practices, genuinely, earnestly. And if there were dishes to wash, I do them too.
What was that IMR's username again?
Cower with Crowder.
No, it's definitely no, it was. Oh, okay, I see it now. Okay, okay. I was confused as to the spelling of the first one.
never clarified the first spelling of that, and I don't think we need to.
Yeah.
Right.
Go on.
Do you guys want to get to some sound?
Sure. I just wanted to, before it goes away or I lose it, this was for you, Matt. Hey, new Matt, I recently started listening to the Revolutions podcast, and Mike Duncan briefly covers the 17th century movement of the Diggers, and I was wondering if you knew of any books that go into depth on the topic, as one of the earliest communist movements says, Emma's pirate impressions.
Give me like a minute to look that up, because I don't off the top of my head, but I have looked into ranters and stuff like that. That stuff is really cool.
Okay.
The easy answer is the work of Peter Linebaugh, Stop Thief, about commons enclosure. Look at Peter Linebaugh, or Linebaugh, I guess is how I pronounce his name. Linebaugh.
Okay, let's get to some sound, because then I just saw this clip and I'm kind of excited.
Which clip?
Well, I'll tee it up.
I will say before we start, not to relight any fires, but I've been thinking about that pirate Amy Goodman thing all week. I have not. I've been doing that bit myself the entire time. It just really has caught on in my household.
It's a good one, and like I probably should have just taken credit for it and not said my boy. But he comes up with these like anachronistic things that make me laugh, and that's another one. I don't even know why she's a pirate. He couldn't really explain it, but she's a pirate in this impression. Anyway,
Arr.
I'm Amy Goodman.
And this is democracy now.
We're here to take your shit.
My pirate accent always slips into something a little bit more offensive. Like, I don't know why. I watch too much Pirates of the Caribbean. That's probably why. So it just slips into, like, I don't know, vaguely Caribbean after a while.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, I think that's some of the seas that they sailed, right?
I mean,
it's literally called Pirates of the Caribbean.
It's titular.
I wasn't aware if it was historically accurate, is what I'm getting at here.
I think no. I think it's not terribly historically accurate.
Thank you. All right, so, shoot, I lost this clip. Mike Lindell, his 72-hour cyber symposium is coming to a close, and of course, I wish I had the soundboard. Of course, this brings many emotions when things end. It's hard sometimes for people to deal with them, and thus Mike Lindell cried on stage about his symposium and made some dubious claims.
Last night when I got to the hotel, I was attacked, and Phil, here we're going to talk about where we're going today in light of this. So, Colonel, go ahead.
So, in addition to the red team, we started receiving credible threat warnings about 2 weeks ago. So, we've had a close team. Close team is what we call somebody's working in the crowd and detecting threats.
Yeah, I guess, and the claim is that Mike Lindell feels he was attacked by Antifa in his hotel room.
But what was the nature of that attack? Was the actual Antifa people in his hotel room?
He's still alive, so I don't see a real scratch on him.
It's unclear because the Antifa attack was believed to be like they were prepared for an Antifa attack at the Cyber Symposium location in South Dakota, where they've been holding this 3-day tech event where they claim they were about to unveil all this data showing that the election was hacked by China and Trump is the rightful winner. This is now day 3 today. But the Antifa never showed up. I guess there's not a big Antifa headquarters in South Dakota.
I know Sioux Falls has the largest Antifa. I mean, probably some, but probably not the largest.
You don't know that.
Well, I mean, I think, it's obvious what happened here. They spent so much time focused on cybersecurity. They laxed on like in real life security. And, Antifa just walked right into his hotel room.
Well, don't you think like maybe just one of the cleaning crew, the maid that's working at the hotel knocked on his door and she saw that she was vague, maybe not white as a lily, and he lost his mind and thought it was Antifa coming for him? Or he's just super coked out. This is just a hypothesis and is now having delusions.
I think that Antifa most likely broke into his hotel room in the middle of the night and beat him with non-MyPillow pillows. Threw him a little like pillow fight party and just like wailed on him in his sleep, which is why he doesn't seem injured, but the attack was like emotional, like in spiritual nature.
Well, that's the thing is I'm worried that we're focused so much on cybersecurity, we haven't considered mental security.
Right. That's a good. I mean, I've been tuning in and out of this Cyber Symposium, the live stream that's been going on for the past 3 days. And it really is, you tune in at any moment. This is like a 12-hour per day event, by the way. And I would say for like 99.9% of this 12-hour per day, 3-day event, Mike Lindell is on stage talking. He refuses to give up the mic to anybody else. He just rambles on and on, discussing how all these tech issues are really attacks. For a cyber symposium, you would assume they'd have their tech game together. But even that, you mentioned, they spent too much time on the cybersecurity. I mean, they've had problems with like Zoom. They've had problems with Skype, like basic things where like that have held this live stream back like hours behind. So, and they've always said, oh, is the NSA trying to shut us down or someone's trying to stop us? So, I mean, they've got a lot going on down there.
So
if you record the board that he had, the conspiracy board, you'd know that he had a lot of enemies. So, Mike Lindell's exists at I don't know what to call it, like the center of a mass conspiracy. And so he's therefore the target of many different schools of mysteries, ABC agencies, the Illuminati's trying to bring him down, Bilderberg Group, NSA, CIA, Antifa. So, he's really having to watch his back. So like they're just coming at him from all angles. So I think it's unfair to judge just one pillow salesman on his ability to defend, every flank in this multi-layer war.
You mentioned that he has a lot of enemies. We don't know who caused the Zoom crash. We don't necessarily know, right? If one of his many people that are trying to take him down and suppress the truth cut the cord, with a little burglar mask on outside of the Sioux Falls Symposium. But Ron Watkins is just asking questions. He's just asking questions at the symposium. Do we have that, Bradley? Ron Watkins, aka the guy most likely behind Q.
Yeah, it's quite coincidental that the video feed breaks and the live streaming platforms break as soon as we start talking about this.
It's like a boot ROM or a
Pause it.
batch file.
Do you guys see that at the bottom there is a MyPillow coupon code? With all the tech issues that, who knows, it's quite coincidental, they still managed to cram the discount coupon code at the bottom of this broadcast at the very least, because, you know, nothing says we're looking out for democracy like 66% off of My Pillow at mypillow.com.
Oh, Right Side Broadcasting. They were the main live streamers of this event. And for the past 3 days, it has been non-stop promotion of My Pillow. And they bring it up in the context, obviously, of, you know, Mike Lindell is being attacked for, you know, he's not a politician. He's not a public figure. He just owns a business, but he decided to make election integrity his issue for all of us. So we need to support him by buying all of his merchandise. And they've gone through, all of them are literally like the bed pillow, the bed cushions, the bathroom goods, just on and on, but all the different, the duvet covers is one of the things they were promoting. I mean, it is just nonstop 24/7 My Pillow advertising. But the reason I think Mike Lindell sounded so defeated in that previous clip where he was attacked, it probably wasn't so much that he was like physically assaulted or anything like that. It's the fact that he's been promoting that they have the data that they're going to unveil at some point in this 3-day event. And then last night, the night of the second day, the Washington Times, which is a fairly conservative news outlet, they posted an exclusive with Mike Lindell's lead cybersecurity expert, the guy who apparently had captured all this packet data that would apparently blow the whole cover on the election being fraudulent. And he told the Washington Times last night that they can't prove China hacked the 2020 election, which again is the whole point of this 3-day symposium. I don't think Mike Lindell was ready for his own guy to go behind his back and run that exclusive somewhere.
Well, you know, I actually tried to watch his first documentary that came out a long time ago, like right after the election or right before, I can't really remember, called like Hard Evidence or 100% Proof or whatever it was called. And I got through like the first one and it had no evidence in it. And it amazed me that you could fill 2 hours with just like hinting that evidence would eventually come. Like when they were going to open up Al Capone's tomb with Geraldo Rivera and it just turned out to be nothing. But like he's been keeping that going for like 6 months. I will say though, whatever happened to like the woke pillow company being started by like David Hogg from the Parkland shooting
that fell apart.
That fell apart. Yeah, I mean, you know, okay.
David Hogg left it because I guess he realized after a while that, hey, you know, this is not a good look. And he left it. And the other guy who nobody knows really, other than him being like a Twitter guy, was left to handle it. And that's sort of when nobody cared about it anymore because David Hogg was the whole draw, wasn't he? Right? I mean,
I can only imagine. But second point, like, and excuse me if this seems obvious, if you were really serious about like not only cybersecurity, but that the government was coming to get you and there's like a whole sort of like secret conspiracy, running your like conference over Zoom just seems like a #1 mistake. Of course, Zoom is not like secure. So if you're telling me that, you know, you think people are hacking your Zoom conference, I would say, well, no, it's probably just Zoom is bad. But if you were really serious about doing cybersecurity, you wouldn't have your conference over Zoom in the first place because obviously someone's listening to it.
Right. Yeah. Right. Symposium using the most basic publicly available programs that are clearly like the reason they're so large is because they aren't secure and disregarded some of those things.
I mean, they're probably just using the trial version of it, you know, which is why it's like shorting out.
Okay. They don't want to pay. That's got to go back to Mike Lindell's pillow fund.
But, you know, like that just speaks to like a larger issue I think we have, not just in the fringe conspiracy community, but just generally anyone who has like this kind of platform based on a very loosely established expertise. Like they just do these like instantly delegitimizing things like, well, use Zoom for my like infiltration of, I don't know, a Russia conspiracy or my talking about a deep state China conspiracy, where it's like if you know, we're really close to it, you wouldn't be doing that. But they're allowed to play pretend at such high levels. It's very, very odd.
Yeah, it is like a cosplay situation, and yet like they're trying to dress up like a knight from medieval times, and they're using a paper sword or something like that, and yet all the idiots in the crowd are like, yeah, you're the expert, you're the real knight.
Well, the weird thing about this whole thing is like, it's not even open to the public. It's invitation only to like cyber experts and like I don't know who else
Conspiracy
can get on the
theorists.
mailing list, I guess.
Right. There are a few like legit people there who like computer experts who were there to literally try, because he put up a $5 million reward for any cyber expert, he said, who can prove that his data is false. I guess the way you get around having to pay that 5 million out is by just not having any data at all. But because he still hasn't shown anything. But my favorite, because Brandon brought up his movies and, you know, how he's able to put together a 2-hour movie that says nothing. I mean, he just outdid himself with a 3-day-long event that says nothing. But my favorite of the movies was the last one called Absolutely 9-0, which was a film based on his prediction that his evidence was going to be so damning that when they took it all the way to the Supreme Court would have no choice but to decide 9-0 on it, meaning Sotomayor would vote that Trump needs to be reinstalled, turn the election around. Everybody, Kagan, all the liberal justices would be like, this is so damning. Trump back in it is. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, after they did that for George, W. Bush in 2000, they haven't done that again. So, I can see why he'd think there's a precedent for it. But, there doesn't seem to be that kind. There's a, difference in the distance between Trump's loss and, HW's. But, I will just say to that point too, like, I'm familiar with like the bounties that people place on like proving easily proved scientific facts. Like, anyone who engages with the flat earth community knows how many like flat earthers put up bounties to prove the earth is in fact a globe and then ignore like the infinite amounts of email proof that the earth is a globe. So, I mean, it just helps to reaffirm people's feeling of confidence that they can predict this stuff and that, they'll never be accurately disproved. But ultimately, Mike Lindell is not a cybersecurity expert. So even if you put like proof in front of his face, he couldn't understand it.
Right. I want to do quickly, because we didn't get to it in the Peacock hour. Let's talk about this Tucker Carlson responding. So Tucker Carlson, he wants his viewers to know that he can do two things at once. So he can prioritizes, I would say at least he prioritizes in this instance one of those two things, Fox News' central tenet of misogyny, over just bashing the Democratic Party at will, because it's probably a bit more salient than going after an already disgraced politician, Andrew Cuomo. Let's see how he manages to juggle these two things when he goes after Lindsey Boylan, one of the accusers in basically proven victims of and survivors of the sexual harassment by Cuomo. Here's Tucker's take.
I really mean it.
He's the gold standard. He's doing a great job. He's a friend. I really mean it. And they all meant it until just about, in fact, precisely December of 2020. That's when a candidate for Manhattan Bureau President, a woman called Lindsey Boylan, wrote a Twitter thread that accused Andrew Cuomo of, quote, harassing her. Sex harassment. The crime, according to Boylan, occurred more than 2 years earlier in 2018, but we hadn't heard about it. So here's the first question. Why did Lindsey Boylan wait 2 years to tell us what had happened? This guy is the governor of one of the most important states in the country. So why didn't she pipe up before, say, before the Emmy Awards? Now, we can't know the answer to that, but it's clear that she picked a politically significant moment to share her allegations on Twitter. Lindsey Boylan went public almost immediately after the news media called the presidential race for Joe Biden. Oh, could it be that the second that call was made, Andrew Cuomo had outlived his usefulness and it might be time to crush him and move on to someone who's easier to control? Now, if you think that's a conspiracy theory, you don't live in New York, where that kind of thinking is common. The state of New York has a long history of palace coups, and many of them a disturbingly long.
Okay, well, the point is that what usefulness did Cuomo have to the Biden campaign? I would imagine that he had very little, especially as these nursing home numbers continued to become more prominent and discussed by the media. And yes, it is a conspiracy theory. Lindsey Boylan came out with these allegations as there was more pressure mounting on Cuomo when it came to this investigation with the nursing homes, and perhaps she felt a little bit safer to speak her truth when she knew that she wouldn't be entirely crushed by the bully that is Andrew Cuomo, who has waged scorched earth campaign after scorched earth campaign against lone people who have spoke up against him in his 11-year tenure as governor. She spoke out when she felt like she had the support after the Me Too movement had culminated, after Andrew Cuomo wasn't seen as this savior and didn't have all the political allies just buttressing him and making sure that no matter what happened, he would be able to bully his way out of something. That's the political reality. And then he draws this conclusion that taking down Andrew Cuomo would somehow hurt Joe Biden in the blue state that is New York. Was Biden campaigning with Cuomo alongside him? Was Cuomo his a part of his campaign? Was he his VP? No, there's no relevance to Biden's presidential ambitions whatsoever, except for the one that Tucker is deciding to draw.
Tucker is one of those guys who thought that Andrew Cuomo was going to jump in and tag Joe Biden out and take his place as the Democratic nominee. So it is quite hilarious that all of a sudden the real goal was to always get Joe Biden in so they could have someone to control. When previously he was saying, obviously Joe Biden's not fit for this. They're going to bring in Andrew Cuomo, who he thought was fit for the job.
Yeah, that went a weird place that I wasn't quite expecting. I thought he was just going to use like this whole thing to, further delegitimize the, Me Too movement and like the sort of bog standard stuff. But he's been going down a way more convoluted path recently with a lot of these sort of, twisting conspiracies type stuff. I think in reality, asking why, then there's a confluence of reasons. They were getting ready to slap C on the end of LGBTQ to make Cuomo sexual with things. So I could imagine you'd feel, bitter or petty or any number of negative feelings about that. I personally don't necessarily agree with investigating why somebody felt at what time they came forward, why like it was expedient, especially when the person in the aftermath of them coming forward proved why they were waiting in the first place. We in the aftermath of Cuomo resigning, or in the aftermath of this investigation rather, saw the kind of web of allies Cuomo built that were entirely willing to engage in, like Emma said, smear campaigns, personal, wage personal wars against people coming out despite being part of, legitimate, liberal seeming feminist organizations like Time's Out or whatever. I'm sorry, Time's Up. So, I mean, the reason why people wait is self-evident. Continuing to question it as though we haven't seen that these institutions exist despite their ostensible goal to prop up power is, more or less ridiculous. I also disagree that the lieutenant governor is probably going to be better than him about any of the number of other issues that were leading to his investigations becoming more prominent in terms of the nursing home thing, but also to believe that she wasn't culpable in this sort of culture of toxicity under him is just completely unbelievable. I
mean, Cuomo is the guy who we now know had called, I believe, the Obama administration towards the end of the second term, trying to get Preet Bharara fired as the New York AG. And of course, Trump ended up also having a problem with Bharara and getting him and actually relieving him of his duties. But Cuomo would go that high because someone was investigating why he would close his organization that he put together to investigate corruption in New York. Once they started to look into him, his commission, I should say. So I mean, this is a guy who was very he had a history of going after people who crossed him, and so maybe she didn't want to deal with that. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, people wait for all sorts of reasons. The mystery of why she would wait to come out against Cuomo is the least surprising I could ever think of, to be quite frank.
Right. Let's read some IMs, and then you want to take a call, Matt?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Jacob from Alabama says, would be interested to hear Matt and Brandon's thoughts on Emma saying yesterday that Cory Booker was, quote, the best senator in the history of the United States.
Did you say that?
I think that Cory Booker looks like the animated Superman from the cartoon show back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. He looks like that Lex Luthor. I don't know if we can throw up the picture of Lex Luthor from the Superman animated series, but like to me, like it's just a dead ringer, and that's why I could never support Cory Booker, Emma.
Yeah, totally justifiable reason. Bradley, this is where your production.
Oh wow! I just looked it up myself. He does
need to help.
Not as handsome, not as chiseled, but yeah, it's like it's very.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but this guy looks more evil.
He's a little bit more composed.
Cory Booker's got blue eyes.
Contacts.
Maybe.
Broad shoulders on Lex Luthor there.
Well, I mean, it's aspirational, obviously, but.
Ryan Cole says Mike Lindell was attacked. That'll happen when you don't pay your dealer.
I actually do think like Mike Lindell, I know there's a lot of people in that world, especially the ones with money, who are doing it as a grift. But I truly believe that Mike Lindell is a true believer. Like, I really do think that he believes this. This isn't a grift for him. If anything, I think he's probably lost money. I think he's definitely made less off of selling his My Pillows since doing this. So that's what makes it even more incredible that like this guy totally is not in this solely for the grift at the very least. He really does think that he's onto something here.
I agree. I think the chemicals in his brain make him think that, whatever.
Yeah, something's going on that makes him think it, but he thinks it.
Yeah. Mine Pillow Guy says, great interview today, Emma. I want to write in to tell old Matt how fantastic. Oh, wait, I already read that one. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of heralding me for that debate. So you sure you're not just confusing that with one of the many others you haven't got into yet?
Davey 9000. Hey, Binder, saw your Convo Couch appearance and I'm impressed with your patience. Also, I was baffled by Isabella's attempt to compare the squad with the Tea Party-oriented Freedom Caucus, a Koch brothers-funded operation. Seems diametrically opposed to her notion of grassroots working class movement. I don't even know who this person is, but I'm glad if she's like a force the voter that you...
She's the one who, well, the two of them spoke at the Los Angeles Medicare For All rally. Well, the two of them were supposed to. But then there was a whole big scandal online when the guy Pasta was removed from speaking because he refuses to get vaccinated, and obviously not maybe someone you want to have at your Medicare For All rally. And then Fiorella went on stage and they cut her mic, I believe, when she started going off again at this Medicare For All rally about Julian Assange. So yeah,
said that we can't trust the government to institute single payer. Is that right?
I don't. Oh yeah, that was her. I was supposed to debate her about that because she's someone, again, a Medicare For All strident person who's all in on force the vote to make it happen. But then she responded to someone's tweet who was anti-Medicare For All with like, yeah, I agree with you. I don't trust the government to make it happen either. And I thought we were going to debate that. But when I got there, she proceeded to say how I still want it to happen. I just would have questions about, the government running it not to the best of their capabilities. I'm like, how do you debate that when she's doing a 180 on what she originally went for? And she's saying she does completely support it. She just has worries.
I just want to make sure we get this because I'm like, there's more IMs on this because I'm going to watch this later. The only generous view of people like Fiorella is that they don't actually expect Medicare For All. Their theory of change is that people will demand Medicare For All, Congress will fail to deliver, and then people will start a revolution in response. The other guy was not a leftist by any definition, though. His politics were vague populism, indistinguishable from Tucker Carlson.
Oh yeah, I asked him right off the bat. I asked him, like, I said, listen, if you want to unite with someone who doesn't have all of your beliefs, fine. But what is like the one main like uniting aspect of people who consider themselves to be socialists, communists, leftists? And I was like, yes, anti-racism. There's a whole bunch, but there's a single, middle like thing in the middle that connects it all, and that is the capitalist state. And we need to dismantle it in order to affect all those things down the line. And he goes, well, I don't believe in that. I don't think we need to get rid of capitalism. In fact, I would like a little mixture of everything, a little bit of capitalism, a little bit of socialism, a little bit of communism. I'm like, okay, that sort of goes against everything apparently you guys espouse. Like, I don't know how you think you're going to get what you want if and it's just and they also brought up the Jimmy Dore Sam Seder debate and how who I thought was right. And I said, I mean, at the end of the day, that debate comes down to the fact that the one thing that mattered is that Jimmy Dore said he laughed at the idea that Trump would get 3 Supreme Court justice picks. And look what happened. I mean, there's no way you can lose the debate more badly than that. Like, laugh at some surely hard to, like, improbable but not impossible scenario. But then that improbable but not impossible scenario actually happening, I mean, you lost that debate badly if that's what what you came away with.
Yeah, if people want to come away from that debate saying that they think Jimmy won it after all these years, more power to him. Good luck.
Rabbit from Boston, comment and question for Brandon. I admire your slay the spire skills. Who's your favorite character? Mine is the Silent.
I agree. I like the Silent as well.
There you go.
But I also think that, once you get to the higher levels of the game, Ascension, like 16 plus, it's luck, in the Silence build is very, very narrowly tailored for like, how do you get, Ascension level 20 defeats. But today people are commenting because I made it to the top 10 on the daily, and, they should be commenting. That's just another one of my many talents.
Pirate Amy Goodman wrote in, look at me. I'm the democracy now.
I think I don't want to discourage the Pirate Amy Goodman thing, but I think we need more content in the voice of Amy Goodman and a pirate to synthesize these things, as opposed to I'm Amy Goodman.
Well, again, this was not well formed or meant to actually.
That's what I like about it, that Emma brought it up without any context or any additional anything. She just said, yeah, my boyfriend's got a character, Pirate Amy Goodman. I'm Amy Goodman.
I disagree 100% with Matt. First Matt, not second Matt. I like that it's only Yarg, I'm Amy Goodman, and that, because to me, like, that's what makes it special.
It's like almost too intimate for me to have shared. Simply just because it's like that kind of very specific inside joke. Anyway, but it's taken on a life of its own. Libertarian. I'm not reading that name. You guys need to watch the Mike Lindell interview that Pacman did last night. Well, I'll read it. It's long and very strange. Lindell talks about being a former crack addict, as well as the reward for proving him wrong at the 72-hour thing.
I gotta say, Pacman does those things fairly well. That reminds me of like years ago when I was first discovering Pacman's channel, and he would have just nutcases like that on, and I might actually check that out.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. Okay. You want to take
a call? Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to the phones. 570. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, yes. This is Dave from Scranton. Again, thank you for taking my call. I just have a quick question. Emma and our crew, and along with Sam, you guys have been in this field for a long time. And the simple question is, whether you agree or not with these people, how many in this YouTube sphere or this media sphere overall, how many do you think are actual grifters or became grifters over time, besides Jimmy Dore and his team of yes men and copycats? I mean, what percentage? Usually I'm pretty good at picking out the people who just simply pander, but overall, like, what do you think the percentage is? And, how do you, what could you say to like convince people like what these people who are actual grifters and panderers do, to like show people that they are grifters? Thank you for the call.
I would say anyone who's making lots of money doing politics on YouTube is a grifter. Because there's no money in actually being a leftist on YouTube, I'll tell you that. But to more seriously answer your question, I mean, obviously, if anyone all of a sudden changed their politics, like we've seen from various people, I mean, again, I don't know how into their politics that they originally espoused they were to begin with, but, the Dave Rubins, the Tim Pools, the Jimmy Dores. I mean, these are all people who clearly, they started as something completely antithetical to what they are now espousing. And, everyone grows, but you develop more in that specific ideology that you apparently were fighting so hard for to begin with. You don't completely flip and do a 180.
Yeah, but I want to caution people against going on heresy hunts too much in this time. I think that there is a lot of stupidity out there. I think people are changeable. I think there's a lot of bad incentives going on. But I think ultimately, like it is what it is. Like, I think the Jimmy Dore stuff, like, I don't think people actually watch that debate and think Jimmy came out on top.
Yeah.
And I think over the course of a time period, this stuff kind of proves itself out. So I think being a little bit more Christ-like, Emma. I think everyone. So there's two models of dialogue. This comes from my grad school learning. There's the Platonic and the basically the Christ-like, right? Where Platonic is you're doing dialogues and Messianic is you're just spreading a message, but you're not saying like this isn't for you. That's all that they do. They say they want to draw lines against, say, like the nurses union or DSA or like all these, people they think are cucks. Let them do that because they're gonna whittle and dissolve into like petty bickering fast enough. And meanwhile, the people that were actually like doing stuff will remain, trying to do it.
Well, obviously, I want to follow in the steps of Christ, given our shared plight. But yeah, I also think I forget if this was just in my head or you mentioned it, but like talking about, the amount of money people do make, it's probably not the best argument, right? Because it's more just about the content of what people are saying. Say somebody gets successful and they hit it big with Patreon subscribers. I mean, I think sometimes that can create a bad incentive, but sometimes with the right person, it may not. So Jimmy's house is like not as relevant as is his like completely
disempowering arguments
and disempowering arguments, and his clear mental issues, allegedly. Anyway,
but I think
I did bring up Jimmy Dore's house during my debate with the Combo Couch, and only because they argued that Jimmy Dore is the face of working class America. Like they literally said that. And I was like, listen, I don't think you could. I mean, are people in his line of work working class? Sure, but I don't know if I'd go as far as saying anyone who is an entertainer is the face of working class America. I mean, there's obviously jobs that people connect to working class America more, that were more suited to being the face of.
It's interesting too that they only see one type of person as working class, right?
Yes.
They see it as a white guy from, with a cop with like
that's a dick.
Who's like this fetishized version of a working class person who looks like a white guy from a certain background. And they don't really have interest in representing working class people of different backgrounds.
I can't speak specifically to YouTube because I don't watch a lot of YouTube, except for Slate Aspire related videos. But I think, it's kind of a mistake, or like maybe just like a grouping mistake, to pretend as though like being on YouTube or being just necessarily an independent media is insulating from the same kind of pressures that control and like influence the people who work in regular media. I think where people are finding themselves now dissatisfied with a lot of YouTube is that it's been around long enough for people to build these kinds of audiences and to gain platforms, only to find them more or less moving towards some of the same pro status quo messaging that you would get in the New York Times or any other sort of mainstream outlet. So, I mean, for me, I don't know how we can sort of change any specific like slice of media without changing the underlying sort of incentive structure, where it's just, it's easier to make money by reaffirming people's, underlying beliefs than it is to challenge them in any real comprehensive way. People are always going to be more inclined towards looking for audiences that are already, built in, like appealing to far right podcasts or far right article writers' audiences, because they already exist as a bucket of people to appeal to versus trying to appeal to people who don't already exist in the I'm paying money to online service type of population. And so, we just have to be more critical, I think, of the entire structure and incentive structure of media. And just, at the end of the day, not every person who writes an article or puts up a video is a journalist, and not every particular publication that has $1 million behind it is legitimate. Just like not every particular, YouTube video that has 1 million views and people saying, wow, this is a great, really stunning expose on like the way things work, is worthwhile to watch. Sometimes it really does come down to like informing yourself in a way that's a little bit you know, more judicious than looking for what the next hot thing is, you know, people are talking about what the next hot YouTube video is. And honestly, I don't know how to recommend people do that in America when so much of our internet space is controlled in order to reinforce these messages and, you know, neo-colonial, neoliberal like hegemony, right? Under various types of like veneers or guises. You know, I don't know, like Matt says, like so part of what I find weird about debate culture is that it exists in this space where people are just allowed to like call themselves a socialist or whatever. And it's just like, but you're not. Like, you're just not by any real metric. And it's impossible to have this conversation when we are so radically divorced in terms of like what we think the world, how the world works and how it functions.
Right. I totally agree with that, all of that. If we want to get to some more sound, we probably should get to it too, because we have a hard out at 2:20. Sam's coming here. Got to do an interview for the Peacock show. You guys have anything that you feel strongly about?
I think we got it to everything that I felt strongly. Oh, wait, this isn't a sound, but should we get to that Andrew Yang tweet?
We should. Should we double dip on the Crenshaw thing? Brandon, Matt, would you like a bite at that apple, or do you think we should just go to the Yang?
I'm happy to do it either way.
You know, I'm fine with Crenshaw. I'm fine without Crenshaw. I'm Crenshaw agnostic.
Crennostic. Let's just do Yang then.
Okay.
So Andrew Yang came onto the political scene, as many people know, through a presidential campaign in which he talked about universal basic income and made that synonymous with his name, which was actually quite an excellent branding exercise as a politician. And progressives were encouraged that the discussion about UBI was being had. Unfortunately, though, his entire concept was watered down to sapping basic resources here in New York when he ran for mayor for a basically payment program for lower income people while getting rid of homeless protections and other programs that are provided for people here in the city. So he's watered it down pretty much instantly when he got close to the mayoral office. And I'm sure it would have been watered down even more. So it came at the expense of poor people just basically changing money for this proposal as opposed to a supplement. And even on the presidential level, the discussions about UBI were at the expense of other social programs. So,
and when you say he came close to the mayoral seat, we should also mention that he came in fourth.
He was the front runner for a while and failed spectacularly because he really is not that bright.
He would have come in third if he hadn't replaced, like, I think, like Emma said, the $1,000 a month or a year, whatever he was like selling as part of his meme candidacy with like Chuck E. Cheese tokens or whatever, like the new thing in Brooklyn was like Dave and Buster, like bonus points. Like no one wants that. People would, you know, if you're going to trade votes for cash, then like actually it has to be actual cash,
but that is
store credit.
That is a perfect segue into his latest evolution of this UBI concept. Pull up this tweet if you could, Bradley. He is now advocating for cryptocurrency as a path to UBI. So now we're talking about crypto instead of payment. That truly makes no sense and makes me worry about you.
I mean, this is the whole thing we see from Bitcoin advocates. Their answer to every problem out there is literally just to throw Bitcoin at it. Like that's what they say for everything. Oh, you know, if there's some sort of economic crisis, some sort of climate catastrophe that Bitcoin mining is actually contributing to, they just throw Bitcoin at it. Bitcoin will solve these problems. I've seen the latest in Bitcoin magazine. Yes, there is an outlet completely dedicated to just Bitcoin, not even the crypto industry as a whole, just Bitcoin. They have a whole really long piece, like thousands of words, about how Bitcoin will help the Palestinian people and get them out of the situation they're in. Of course, they don't really mention much about how the whole entire reason they're in this situation is because of the occupation. But it's incredible because, first of all, crypto as a whole, and Bitcoin obviously is included, it's a speculative asset. It is an investment. the money, the worth of it, I should say, the monetary value of it ebbs and flows. It goes up, it goes down, it's all over the place. The whole point of UBI is to provide people with a stable, guaranteed amount of money. How the two are connected whatsoever, I don't see it. I don't see it. They seem to be quite divergent and go against what each other stands for, to be quite frank.
Well, I mean, I see it because like Bitcoin is like a speculative asset that gains all of its value from like tricking people into thinking it's not that. And so like Bitcoin is the first step to a multi-step solution to every problem, whose second step is like question mark, and whose third step is like solved. But I'm not surprised that like Andrew Yang has like gotten behind this, meme candidacy, meme troll stuff. Cause like, yeah, this is just Reddit libertarian 101, Andrew Yang, Elon Musk, Bitcoin. And like, that's just the loot box that you get when you join, like, I don't know, r/crypto or r/ like civil libertarian or whatever. So, I mean, I think the biggest problem is how many people take Andrew Yang seriously. And, I think that just speaks to like this, I hate to say it, devolution of trolling. It used to be back in the day when you troll, you could call out for being a troll. You'd be like, you got me, ha, 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 I suck. Now it's just like you call out Andrew Yang for being a meme candidacy, people get really, really defensive, partly because of the speculative nature of Bitcoin needing you to believe in it, that it's not that, but also just because of like the insecurity that comes from this new wave of like political tech billionaire or whatever he is at this point.
Yeah, like when I bash it, so every once in a while I get somebody saying like, well, I actually like use this to make money and this, that. And it's like, I don't blame anybody who makes money at a casino, but when you start turning like your good night at a casino into a mission to like proselytize about how great casinos are and how they're going to solve all of society's problems, that's when it becomes an issue. And that's all you hear, all this stuff about. I literally saw somebody say that Bitcoin would help Jews get their assets out so they could have fled the Nazis better. Like that's literally where they're going with this stuff. And it's again, it's just these guys with like the Bitcoin stuff, hashtags in their bio, and they're monetizing their content about selling Bitcoin to people.
Right. Honestly, Andrew Yang's tweet, from like my experience of covering a lot of these, like, because this is what Andrew Yang is now. He's not a politician or anything else. He's an influencer in a sense. From covering all these influencers to promote crypto, this is the type of statement you put out as you are preparing to launch the latest meme coin, UBI coin, or math token or something like that. It would not surprise me if Andrew Yang came out with his crypto of his own in the near future.
Oh, well, yeah, it's going to be a perfect launch pad for that, since we now know that he's unemployed, or he might still be a CNN commentator of sorts, but yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's just interesting how how this culture of, the libertarian Reddit bro, as you put it, Yang is just a part of that new like downstream culture that's going to be a different kind of politician that's going to be more represented in how people see things. It's going to originate in think tanks, and it's burgeoning, I guess. There's a lot of people, I think, younger Wall Street types, who find that to be a more socially acceptable, or it's not, but has the appearances of wokeness in a way that has been monetized and will continue to be so until it's called out more effectively.
There are also just so many different types of crypto meme currency that it kind of also impacts its usefulness as currency, because one of the good things about the dollar is that like it's universal bartering material. Like I don't have to go out and find like 3 chickens or whatever to trade for somebody's copy of Death Stranding. But not only do you have to like do conversions from Bitcoin to real money, but then they also want you to get involved in like Dogecoin and like, I don't know, Lox coin or Dipset coin, all those stuff. So it's just like one long game of like currency arbitrage. You might as well just like actually get involved in like real state currency trading versus like just all of this imaginary stuff.
Yes.
You guys want to jump to the phones for a little bit? Take a call or two, depending on how long the first goes?
Sounds good.
All right, let's go to the phones. 916. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 916. Hello. Oh. 916. Hello? Yep, you're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Weston from Sacramento.
Hey, Weston. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, I've been a long time listener. I was actually a Dave Rubin watcher for a while back in like 2016. But
you're better
found
now.
your show actually. What's that?
But you're better now. You're cured.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the funny thing is I actually found the majority report through Dave Rubin, just the YouTube algorithm. But I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on just the state of the pandemic. I know with like the vaccines and everything, it's just like news about, the Delta variant. I just don't see, a clearer path out of this with all the misinformation going around. Just today at work, we had a meeting, and the management at the company I work for, I would say they're pretty right-leaning, and the owner actually was leading the meeting, and he was suggesting that we, talk to our doctor about, getting hydroxychloroquine. And so I'm just curious your guys' thoughts about all that.
I mean, that's.
Well, don't get that.
Yeah.
That's my first thought. No, don't do that.
What's useful about your story is to show who's actually whose anxieties and prescriptions are being echoed through the media. Like this is like business owners and management that want to get workers working. And that's what this media, like, if there's a great easy solution for it that we don't need to cut into our production time, then we're going to go for it. So they like to latch on to things like hydroxy and ivermectin and stuff like
Quick
that.
fixes.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate all the work you guys do. Like I said, I've been listening since about 2018. Is when I really started to pay more attention to politics. I come from like a Christian homeschool background. So you guys and people like Pac-Man have really brought me out of that world, and just been trying to learn as much as I can about the movement and the left and everything. So really appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.
Oh, that's great to hear. Appreciate it. Think we got time for one more call?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to 727. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Sean. I'm calling from Tampa.
Hey, Sean from Tampa. What would you like to talk about?
So, I haven't seen a lot of coverage on this program about the Piney Point disaster in Tampa Bay, where about 2,000 tons of a lot of water, which was coated with phosphorus and all these other byproducts of fertilizer mining, was dumped into Tampa Bay to prevent it breaking the seawall of the gypsum stack it's in from destroying an area, like residents and schools and stuff. And after that, about a month later, there's been one of the worst algae blooms in Tampa Bay probably ever. The last recording I saw was about 600 tons of dead fish have been removed from Tampa Bay. That, give or take, is basically every fish that was in Tampa Bay. They're just, the whole thing is spreading everywhere. And it basically ruins all the economy around there. The beaches, I wouldn't go to the beach at this time. It's nasty. My friend who lives in that area said one day he went outside and you could just smell dead fish 2 miles inland. Ugh. It was just horrible.
Is this?
Right? It was just horrible. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is this parallel? Because I haven't heard of this, but I've heard of the red tide, I think, that is caused by sugar industry pollution. Is this just parallel to that?
No, this created an even worse red tide. So red tide happens every now and again, once a year, every now and again. But this was basically an accelerated and empowered red tide using all that phosphate to just feed itself and grow at an exponential rate, like 2 to 3 months earlier than it usually comes out. So this one, I don't know if Tampa Bay is ever going to bounce back from this.
Well, I'm seeing here that this site is still open.
Yes. So what's really great is Florida has about 40 of these gypsum stacks floating around, not floating around, but built around. They're like giant mounds of dirt that they pour the byproduct from mining the fertilizer phosphate into, and they just have them sitting around places, deteriorating over the years. Hurricanes will come and scoop it all up and dump it all places, and they're just around Florida. There's like 9 in the county I work in.
That's unbelievable.
It's really, yeah, it's truly unbelievable and disheartening. And they've been sitting there for like 50 years. And when my like super Republican father had obviously heard about this disaster, he looked at me and was like, whose idea was this? Whose idea was it to allow this? And no state officials have done really anything to clean up these things, to start removing them properly and storing the chemicals safely or disposing them safely. It's just been sitting there failing inspections for the last 30 years. And it's not even DeSantis's fault because the inspections have been wrong for years. But there have been activist groups that have been suing the state and the mining companies to try to get them to just pay for and start working on the environmental impacts, because they're basically just giant landmines waiting to be destroyed by whatever hurricanes are coming and whatnot. And it's really disappointing to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the long-term ramifications of an entire area's fish population being exterminated, and like, let alone the contamination that will linger. It's just the concept of an entire ecosystem basically being washed out. That's essentially all of them, as you're saying.
Right. And Tampa Bay was an estuary, so it wasn't just saltwater or just freshwater. And now I don't even know what it's going to be after this. But that's what I wanted to bring to people's attention. Thank you for giving me a platform. You all have a great day. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I just want to shout out Red Tide Radio, Tomas Kennedy's and Co.'s project. It's Florida-based. That's where I first heard about this Red Tide issue. So if people want more on that, Red Tide Radio.
All right, let's read some IMs and then we gotta jump. Eric from Iowa says, please keep an eye on the COVID rates in Iowa over the next few weeks. We have both school starting and our state fair coming up, and 0 mask mandates. Also, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene will be here to rally as well. Yeah, I saw this from Sound after we already started, that Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about how everyone dies when in response to COVID patients overtaking hospitals. So perhaps we'll touch on that tomorrow a bit. Brendan Stand for Life says, Bitcoin is unironically the future of banking and money in the world, and I pray to God the left in this country realizes it. Is that sarcastic?
I mean, the future of like, as if like it's going to be co-opted by the banks, and to the extent there's any promise in the technology, I imagine that it is very possible, or it's going to decentralize and get rid of all our banks, which I am insanely skeptical.
Yes, maybe that. I think that might be a warning to the left.
As an inherently inherently volatile asset that's perfect for money laundering, I have no doubt that it's going to be used by banks in America and abroad for many years to come, until there's any kind of legislation to prevent it, because that's just what it's good for.
Well, Freedom Poutine says, how is Bitcoin a pathway to equality when it's based on people literally hoarding it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a speculative asset. All that stuff is PR.
Right. Drama Grifter says, the other day I saw a comment from someone that was really upset with Emma for criticizing real leftists from her fancy air-conditioned studio. For some reason, I can't stop laughing about that. Hashtag cancel room temperature Emma. Yeah, well, I like it at a cool 67. That's my ideal temperature. We already read that from Jacob from Alabama. They always ask, why did she wait? Or Vinny Holiday says, they always ask, why did she wait so long, but then reject the Me Too movement, which is trying to normalize a culture of speaking out against these abuses as they happen. Agreed.
It's also the only crime that anyone ever asked that about, noticeably. Like if someone takes a little bit a while to like report an assault of a non-sexual nature, no one ever asked like, well, why did he take so long to report that this guy kicked his ass? Why did he take so long to like witnesses taking a long time to come forward for crimes is not in any way abnormal, especially in a country where we do nothing to protect them.
Right. Shiver me timbers. Arg, Emma, make sure Bradley scrubs the poop deck. He needs to keep that $24 million crow's nest in ship shape. Savvy?
Aye.
Nay Perez says, random, but I watch a lot of Real Housewives on Bravo. Kudos. And one of the housewives' husbands is one of the richest lawyers in California, and turns out he was running a Ponzi scheme and stealing his clients' settlements.
We know.
I don't watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, but I've seen this. The clients he stole from include victims from the PG&E explosion and orphans from plane crash victims who Boeing paid out. ABC just made a documentary about it called The Housewife and the Hustler, and he was the lawyer who Newsom and other governors called for advice on picking judges. Newsom was on Bravo's talk show back in the day, and they asked him who his favorite housewife was, and he straight up said it was Erica because her husband donated so much money to him. The doc is interesting because it kind of touches on the state-level corruption in the judiciary, but didn't go deep enough.
Definitely watch that though. It's really good.
The Housewife and the Hustler.
Yeah, it's a good watch.
Yeah, Bradley likes reality TV like myself. Brandon, we could bring you into this conversation at some point when we have a little bit more time.
I'm more of a hip hop, loving hip hop New York kind of guy, but I'm always down.
I just like the Beverly Hills Housewives are too up there, like they're too up their own ass. I like Potomac in New York where they're a little more real. But I digress. All right, we'll just take a few more. Culturally Catholic, over 100,000 homes in the Milwaukee area lost power Tuesday night due to storms. And as of this morning, 64,000 are still waiting for power to be restored during the hottest week of the summer. The power company that services the Milwaukee area says it's the worst outage they've seen in ever. We desperately need the infrastructure to survive the coming climate crisis. Agreed. Wyoming Ryan, let's be fair, Crenshaw is susceptible to flank attacks from the right. That's pretty good. Coach McQuirk, when National Treasure came out and it was all the rage in my school.
I just got that one.
Right.
It's also true, but it's true in many ways. It's a multi-layered joke.
Be careful, IMer, before Lauren Michaels makes you apologize for that one.
My parents didn't want me to watch it because they had something more accurate in mind. So instead we watched a conspiracy DVD about the signatures on the Declaration of Independence and how it's fake or some shit like that. I mostly remember it being 2 hours long and bored out of my mind. Wow, Coach McGurk, that
sounds great.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun time. All right, just a few more. Matt L, this is the first perfect time to mention the Timba video.
It's a great video. We'll play a clip tomorrow. Timba on Toast did I think first part of a 3-part series on Tim Pool, and it really nails him.
Miss Heathen says, rest in power, Heather Heyer. Yes.
Right. This is the anniversary of her death. Geez, time surely. Unite the Right in Charlottesville was today 3 years ago, I believe, right? 2017, so 4 years ago.
4 years.
Right. And the final IM of the day, yard sign and joiner. Brandon makes a great point, and I would only add that cryptos are Forex futures options trading for people that would never be approved by a broker to engage in that kind of trading due to low income and financial illiteracy. Anyway, I'm marketing a new coin that can cure erectile dysfunction. So invest in Sigma coin today. This is a great IM to end on.
It's not Ligma coin?
Yeah.
You might want to stick away from those those Greek letters until the COVID-19 thing gets stamped down, because you're really presumptuous that we're going to end with like Lambda or whatever we're at this point.
Yeah, we're gonna end it on Zeta probably, or Zeta 40.0. But Brandon, Matt,
YouTube.com/Matt Binder for the COVID. Oh my God, I almost called them the COVID couch. The
So
combo
rude, man.
couch debate with me and them, and tonight 9 p.m. Eastern time live stream youtube.com/Matt Binder.
All right. Check out the discourse. Check out Left Reckoning. Guys, see you all tomorrow.
Well, not me, but
Not you. The folks in the watching.
well, yeah.
To get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice is made, for the option where you don't get paid.